Welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast, a platform dedicated to honoring America's women veterans who dare greatly in all aspects of life. I'm your host, Sarah Scully. At Women in the Arena, we harness the power of storytelling to illuminate the human experience. Through authentic narratives, we honor the resilience, authenticity, and leadership of women who have served our country. Our name, Women in the Arena, pays homage to Theodore Roosevelt's legendary speech, The Man in the Arena, recognizing the remarkable contributions of women in traditionally male-dominated domains. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Women in the Arena podcast. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of sitting down with Janet Nalls, Chief of Staff and Director at NetCentrics Corporation. Janet is an Air Force veteran and a national security expert with over 25 years of experience supporting some of our nation's most critical missions. In our conversation, Janet's going to share her passion for mentorship, leadership, and empowering the next generation of national security professionals. Something I absolutely loved about Janet is her incredible energy and her authenticity she brings to every conversation. Honestly, this didn't even feel like a recorded podcast. It just felt like a conversation between two friends, and we could have spent the whole day talking. Janet reminds us that we are far more capable than we often believe, and that staying true to ourselves throughout the journey is what matters most. So I hope you enjoy this conversation just as much as I did, and I just feel truly thankful to have had such a remarkable woman on our show. Enjoy. Janet, welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast. So stoked that you're here. I also just realized that your outfit is bouncing off the color of the light behind you, so it's just a very beautiful, beautiful visual.
We're vibing.
Good thing we have video too to capture that. But I'm so stoked about this connection, and thank you so much for making the time. I know you're a very busy woman, and we both braved the McLean traffic coming out here and some crazy winds in the DC area. So,
we are survivors.
but we made it. And I want to start with so our first connection that we made was that we both love Brene Brown. So Brene, if you're listening, we love you. We're inspired by you. This is the second time I've brought up Brene in a podcast, and my hope is that one day she hears me giving her a shout out.
It's all about those little connections, those little hashtags.
Yes.
Somebody said your name. Ooh, somebody said my name.
Yep, exactly.
You just never know.
We just never know. Well, welcome. I'm so excited to introduce you to our listeners and get into your story and some of the other things that we're excited to talk about. So first, I want you to introduce yourself. I know what you're going to lead with when you introduce yourself because it's something you're very proud of, but I'll hand it over to you.
Yes. So my name is Janet Nalls. I am originally from Chicago, Illinois. Everything built about America comes from Chicago. If you don't know, you better ask somebody. I am currently the Chief of Staff at NetCentrics Corporation. It is a cybersecurity corporation out in Herndon, Virginia. Been with them for about almost 3 years now. I'm an Air Force veteran. I am a mother. I'm a reader. I am all of the things, and I am just trying to take it one day at a time out here in these Virginia streets.
Absolutely. I think I feel like everybody that comes on, we're just, we're taking it one day at a time because so many of the people that we talk to are juggling so many things, like you said, just yes. Wearing so many hats. So let's start with your entry into the Air Force. Tell us how you got there and what your pathway to service was.
My mother is the reason that I am here today. She saw me struggling with trying to figure out what I was going to do next with my life. We were in a weird spot where my parents didn't really have any outreach for us to talk about college or what that would look like for us, both financially and academically. I made the mistake of only applying to like one college thinking, I'm going to get into this school. I don't need to apply anywhere else. So I had no guidance to help me do better at that aspect. And I was working at Office Depot. I hated the job. I knew I could do more, but I didn't know what to do. And so my mother actually went out and talked to a Air Force recruiter downtown. That's where she worked. And she gave me her name, and I was gone in less than a month.
Wow. So mom sent you.
Mom sent me. It was a very easy decision. Aside from choosing between intelligence or jet engine fuel mechanic, I think I did pretty good on my own.
Yes, yes, you did. And what did you love about the Air Force?
I didn't know that I was going to love it so much. Didn't know what to expect. My father was a Army veteran. He was drafted during Vietnam. He just told me to listen up and do good work. That's all he had for me. And um, I didn't know I was going to meet the people that I met, who I still know and love and hang out with to this day. I didn't know I was going to learn as much as I did. I didn't know it would change who I was. I didn't know it would amplify the things that my parents had taught me over the course of my young life, and lead me down a path to thinking I could be a lawyer, to being out in this world, like being a chief of staff of something. I didn't know it would change the trajectory of my life, in the best way possible.
Yeah.
I always have love for the Air Force, so that I always recommend people go to it. It's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I was having this conversation with someone last night, actually. And they were just talking about joining the military and thinking about it's just usually a really random thing that happens. Like someone suggests it to you, bomb kicks you and kicks you over to boot camp, whatever. But thinking about how the trajectory of your life would be so different just from that one decision or that one interaction or whatever that leads you down that path.
That's very true, because I had to walk through the door. I had to talk to her and take that ASVAB test and go through all the jobs and try to figure out what looked interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do all that legwork. I had to make sure I could run. I had to make sure that I really wanted to leave Chicago. I on my own
Mm-hmm.
at 19 years old. I had to figure that out on my own. After she showed me the door, she just gave me the card and said, "You should call her." So it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. What was your favorite assignment or chapter of your Air Force career?
Oh my gosh. My first duty station was Ramstein Air Base in Germany. And I was then a 20, about 21. I think I turned 21 in tech school in San Angelo. I went to Ramstein, so I was 21 years old. I was a straight up super smart nerd. I did not know that I could be a knucklehead. But the core group of girls that I met there are my core group of girls now. So it felt like college.
Oh, yeah.
We were in a dorm that was off base, so we weren't on Ramstein, Maine. We were on a 2-floor dorm. The base club was walking distance to our house. I mean, come on.
We know what happens next.
We know what happens next, okay? I played on the base volleyball and basketball team, so I was always traveling. I felt like, oh, this is high school amplified. I just have to go to work.
Yep.
I got a bonus while I was there. I didn't know what to do with money. So it was a free-for-all. That was probably the best assignment. I met my first mentor in the Air Force there, who changed my life, who I'm friends with to this day. So many great things happened in Germany that I will always have love for it.
Yeah. Who's the mentor?
Her name is Donna Martin.
Okay.
She was my second supervisor. She's the one that showed me what leadership looked like in the military. As a Black woman, as an NCO, she paved the way. When I first arrived there, we had a challenge with our current supervisor. You have 3 young airmen in one section. We're all, doing the best we can. We're all knuckleheads. We're all trying to get stuff done. It's a very important mission. Even in peacetime, we still have to be on our P's and Q's. And, he wasn't up to the task, so much so that he basically had a nervous breakdown. And we were kind of left at our wits, which you don't want to leave young airmen left at their wits.
Mm-hmm.
You need them steered towards a certain objective outside of work, like professionally, that this is how you act, this is how you demonstrate yourself and your worth, and this is how you get further in your career. We didn't have that for a while, so we were gapped with knowledge. And then here comes Donna Martin, like a force of nature. Like, she just knew what to do, like the fairy godmother of all airmen.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you do X, Y, Z, you do A, B, C, you do 1, 2, 3. No, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do this. You don't bring this here, you don't bring this here. You take this home with you. She laid it down real hard. But it's what we needed at the time.
Yeah.
And it was done in a very loving way, but a very stern way, because, she's like, you are a reflection of me and my leadership. I was like, oh.
Mhm.
And it got to a point where it's like, okay, we're going to do our best because we want to make sure she looks good because
Right.
she's taking care of us.
Yeah.
And I took that with me wherever I went. What's that movie? I forgot what it's called, where they ask, is it better to be feared or loved? It's better to be loved.
100%.
It's better to be loved because people follow you because they love what you're doing. They love how they make you feel. Definitely better to be loved. And so she taught us that.
Well, I love that. And love is one of our values here at Iron Butterfly Media. So I like that we gave a little shout out to love.
Still vibing.
Lead with love.
Lead with love.
Yep.
One of my
100%.
favorite excerpts that I have is about leading with love that I keep on my office wall because people who do it that way have better results.
100%.
There are better outcomes when you lead with love than the lack of it. People feel it and then they leave. You try to figure out why. And that's why, because they don't feel valued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day because Megan was saying how I guess somebody said to her once, you use the word love a lot when you're talking about things. And she said, well, it's because I mean it. It's because I love the way you lead, or I love working with you, or whatever. And I think, maybe it's that many spaces were so masculine for so long that we're bringing in that feminine love energy. But I think it's a great thing. And like you said, I think people want to follow you more and make you proud when you lead with love and when they love you back. So
Right. It's always a value add.
Mhm.
Always.
Mhm.
Anyone who says it's not, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Immediately.
100%. So you spent 12 years in the Air Force and you enjoyed it. So what was the decision that made you take a pivot professionally?
Well, at around the 12-year mark, so I did 8 years active duty and I did 4 in the reserves. I was intent on continuing in the reserves, but the reserve unit I was in was on the same schedule as the active duty unit. So I left the military because I did back-to-back deployments. My job was a critical career field. So, and then I was within that critical career field, I had a critical job. I was a targeteer, so that's specialty training. So you're always on rotation. There are only so many targeteers who are certified to do the work that we do that get deployed. And, after 9/11, we were always deployed. So I was always on rotation. So I did back-to-back deployments and I was burnt out,
Mhm.
which is why I left active duty. I wish I could have had the support system to help me not be burnt out. I probably would have stayed in the military. But the current leadership that I had, I was petty and I just left. I had nothing to hold me there
Yeah.
or hold me up. And the reserves, it was different. I had less commitments. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, so I said, I'm going to go back to Chicago because in Illinois, if you come back after having served, they'll send you to whatever school you want to go to for 4 years, including graduate school. So I heard free 99 and I came on back home. And I was working at a law firm, and we deployed every year.
Mhm.
Still, I was with a KC-135 Taker unit, and we were on the same rotation as active duty. So we did not have any breaks. We
Yeah.
were still actively engaged in OIF and OEF, and I wanted to do something different. I moved down here to Virginia to get a better job. I realized that being a lawyer was not for me. I tried. I worked as a paralegal. It wasn't my jam, so I had to move on.
Mhm.
And coming down here, having to go back to Indiana all the time for a drill and thinking about deploying again, I wanted to go to grad school. Something had to give. And then my father was dying. So it was all at one time, happening all at one time. And I was either going to break or something had to give. And so I had to let that go. My dad died. And I realized, okay, I need to only serve the government in one capacity.
Yeah. Not multiple capacities.
Because, you're taking up too much of my time as it is. And I
Yeah.
had to juggle all these things to be able to make sure that I was present for his transition away from this world. So that was an eye-opener. So I said, I need to do less.
Yeah.
And I want to do more in some other area.
Mhm.
So I went to grad school, had one job.
Mhm.
And I was good with that. I was like, I've done my time. I'm good.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. It's always funny when you're juggling multiple hats, when you're like, what if I just had one job?
What if?
Because so many of us are like juggling like side hustles and reserve duty and all the things. And it's funny to think, oh, what if I just had one?
Ambitious women.
Yeah. We have this way.
We have this way of wanting to do more and thinking we can double ourselves.
Yeah.
And then someone comes and looks at us and says, do you know you can have a seat?
Yeah.
And we're like, what is that? What is doing less? I want to do all the things.
Yes.
And so it's hard to say no, especially when it's something that you love to do.
100%.
I understand completely.
So what was, so after, you pivoted away from law, what did the next professional chapter look like for you? What did you start diving into?
I think I just needed a break away from Intel.
Yeah.
I was very, very burnt out. And I came down here to actually supported DIA as my first go round as a contractor. Now that pivot from active duty to working in a law firm, there was a lot of unbrainwashing that had to happen. It came to no one's checking for me.
Yeah.
There's not an SOP here. I'm going to be a paralegal. What are the protocols? I called my boss ma'am for a very long time until she pulled me to the side and said, my name is Vanessa. So it's a lot of unbrainwashing that had to occur. I had to figure out who I was as just Janet versus Sergeant Nalls. And so after I realized that the legal field wasn't for me and I came down to support DIA, it was just another shift in I'm just doing what's required for this mission for this time period. The work that I was doing was very boring, and I wanted to do something very much different than that. I wasn't going to leave until I had something like firm up solid. Luckily, the job was moving to Charlottesville, and I was not going to do that. So, things kind of forced me to pivot a little bit. So that forced an additional pivot to go and work like for USDI and then ODNI. My footing really good at ODNI. I did not know that I had like program advisory skills like that until I was forced to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I'm going to be in count. I'm just going to be a regular analyst. And it thrust me into something that I had not done before. I was facilitating working groups.
Yeah.
I was talking to senior leaders. I was making advisory decisions at the highest level of the government at that time. ODNI was still the baby agency. Was trying to find our footing, making sure we coordinated with other agencies, and that forced me to learn how to do my first set of parish calls to other agencies. What do you need? What are we lacking?
Yeah. How
can we help? And then reporting and writing that stuff down. I'm developing communications plans. I'm like, who am I?
Right. I want to discuss that a little bit. One of the things that you and I had chatted about previously was career transitions, and there's a couple of different transitions I want to talk about while we're here. And one is leaving the military and I guess developing the sense of confidence that you can step into something like that, like an advisory role or something a little bit more strategic. We all struggle with imposter syndrome when we get out of the military. And really, I think for anybody making any career pivot, but I think many people leave, they're like, well, I had my job when I was a logistician, or I was a analyst, or I was a this or that. And you're used to that structure of like, this is what you can and can't do. And then how did you kind of come to in confidence and like in just believing in yourself to step into a more strategic role like that and kind of break out into something new?
I did it by failing. So my work at USDI was very new. We were tasked with something that, how when a general says, I want it this, and this, but I don't know how I want it. I want you to figure that part out.
I've been there.
Some people are good with that. Others struggle. At that point in my career, I struggled. We want you to set up this pet team. We don't know what we want it to look like, but we want something to be rapid fielded. Rapid fielding was real hot back then. They just threw money at the air, the sea, the wind, the sky. And so I had no clue what I was doing. I was doing the best that I could with what I had, but I had no clue what I was doing. And it was very apparent. And at that same time, my father was transitioning And, I shut down. I was grief stricken. I didn't know what to do. Um, and I was actually let go from that position. Luckily, my company, I had already, I had really good rapport with my PMs. The person who referred me to the organization knew that it wasn't like, this is not like her. And so they gave me a second chance, put me over at OD&I. At that point, I had to like snap out of it a little bit. I had done some grief counseling to talk about what happened, and said, okay, they put me here in this advisory role. They gave me this set of priorities that I have to do. I need to figure out what the heck I'm doing. And so it took me like really sitting down. How do I plan this out for myself? How do I make sure I'm successful? And I had to open my mouth.
Yeah.
I had to talk to people.
Yeah.
And that was new, right? There's only so much talking for a purpose in the military that you do, and then the rest of the time you are, smoking and joking.
Yep.
And so, but I had to really turn it on. I had to really go and walk down the hall and talk to national intelligence managers and their teams. I had to figure out who the right people were. That forced me out of my box a lot, because I was so used to people coming to talk to me, and I had to go out and figure out what people needed to make a mission successful. And so I just had to turn it on. And I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was always there and waiting to be activated until I really needed it. So I really needed to have a job at that point. So that was definitely
make or break.
A motivating factor. I love the company that I was with, and they believed in me, and that probably made the biggest difference. My PM, Marion Kennedy, who I consider a mentor to this day, who I owe lunch to, I'm just remembering that right now. She saw me and she believed in me, and she made sure that she checked in on me. And she gave me tips about how to make sure if I needed to take some time away, do so. And so her caring for me let me know, okay, I have someone in my corner and I don't want to let her down. She loved me in that way, and that helped tremendously for me to bounce back and be like, I have to do this for her, for this company, for this mission. And I did it. And I did it well. I was facilitating meetings with 30 some odd people, talking Chicago fast. And figuring it out as I go. So I was like, okay, I can really do this. And then I was doing it pregnant. I said, oh, I can really do this. It made all the difference. It made grieving better because I was more focused. I had something that helped pick me up, and that it was the love of my friends and family that helped pick me up during that time. And so it just grew my confidence by leaps and bounds, being able to do that. And I actually, our team did very, very well. Like we won an award. We were briefing the DNI. I'm like, look at all the stuff that we're doing, and being recognized for, and doing doing the good work. Listen up and do good work.
I love it. And thank you for sharing a moment of failure too, because we're, I think, with this podcast and then our OG Iron Butterfly podcast and now our third podcast, we're surrounded by the best of the best of these women we're bringing on. I mean, people who have just achieved miraculous things and lived pretty amazing lives. But people probably don't think that any of these ladies we talk to have failed or have been let go or had moments of, just not performing at their peak. And so thank you for sharing, the fact that you did have a moment of perceived failure, but that it pushed you into something better. And it's, I think, especially hard too to encounter those failures or just like tough chapters of life post military service too, because it's such a there's so much self-imposed pressure around that time because you're finding your new identity and you want that first thing that you do to just be the best thing, and you want to just go out and crush it. And sometimes it takes a few tries to figure out where you're going to land and what's going to be a good fit.
That is absolutely true, because I knew I was going to be a lawyer. I knew I was going to be law and ordering it up somewhere in a Chicago courtroom. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And it did not work out. And I was devastated to have to pivot. But I knew I can lean back on the skills that I already had. And I had friends to lift me up and say, look, you already have a very well-trained skill set. Lean into that for a minute while you figure out what your next move is. So that's what I did. I made sure I leaned into that. I listened to them. I used them as a crutch to make sure that I was going to be okay. Like I knew I had something else that I could do. And that's the point of, what's happening these days with all the layoffs and whatnot. You have to really lean into what you bring to bear, like what your skills are. And that's happened to me time and time again as we've transitioned from the military to civilian life, to professionally, to taking steps back and then taking steps forward. It always comes back.
And like you said, so timely to be talking about career transitions because we're seeing thousands of highly competent, service-driven, amazing individuals be let go right now from their jobs. And so I guess, at a high level, what advice would you give to some of the people listening who are, you know, unexpectedly facing a huge change and a huge new chapter of unknowns, like how to kind of continue moving forward and find their next thing?
I would tell them to just have some courage. There are, like, my group chats are always blowing up, right? I'm sure yours are too. And I was checking in with my group chat today, just as the news was dropping about more layoffs and whatnot, just to see how everybody's doing and to encourage them as we're going along day by day, not knowing what tomorrow's going to bring. So just remember to have courage. Also remember, like, who you are. You know, your resume may be dusty. It may be sitting somewhere else, but the skills that you have are not dusty. Like people are remarkable. I know a lot of them. These people are amazing people. You have to remember who you are. When I used to help folks who were retiring figure out what their next move was going to be, they would come to me and be like, I heard you good with resumes and helping folks talk through stuff. I'm like, yes, I'm amazing at it. Let's do it. I love this. I'll grab my handy dandy red pen. I'll say, bring me your resume and let's come chat, and we'll take some time to chat over lunch. What do you want to do? What excites you? Is it just money? Is it just you want to do something easy? Everybody has different goals once they retire from the military. What does your resume say about you and these goals that you have? And we would tease those things out. And I was like, well, didn't you do X, Y, and Z while you were here? Yeah. I'm like, why is that not here? Like, don't just pull from your EPR. Who are you in this resume? And I would just get to redlining things, making sure they understood you have value here, here, and here. You're very professional. You project manage. You've done accounting and budgeting. All those things are very important because that means that you think a certain way about processes and procedures that maybe somebody else does not have the experience in. Those are the things you need to highlight, regardless of the job. They'd be like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, this is why I'm here. So I can remind you of how fantastic that you are. I would just have folks be encouraged.
Yeah.
Lean into the skills that you already have. Recognize where, if you want to start pivoting, where those skills are aligned with where you want to pivot. Tailor yourself to whatever job or organization or career field that you want to do. There are so many helpers out here. LinkedIn is blowing up with people who are helping folks navigate, offering counseling services, webinars to think about what your next move is going to be. They're offering one-on-one time. This is the time to be the helper.
Yeah.
And the sooner you recognize that you too could be a helper with whatever you're doing within your circle, within your LinkedIn community, within your job, your friend's kid, whoever, if you make the time, people will come. They really will.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel like we're in an age of connectedness because there's, I think, a lot of people realizing how much that's needed. And it takes a little bit of bravery to put yourself out there and ask.
It really does.
But it's certainly the first thing that you got to do. One of my first jobs out of the military, I literally just cold messaged the CEO of the company and said, hey, I really want to work here. And he said, great, because he was a veteran too. And it took a degree of vulnerability. And, looking back on it, I kind of laughed, but I just went straight to the source.
That's right.
So in the last few years, what have been some interesting, assignments or just work that you've been delving into?
So I would say I spent 4 years supporting the White House military office. Probably time of my life, right? So you reach the pinnacle of where you're providing like the utmost excellent advice and counsel to folks that are supporting the mission of the President of the United States. So everything that comes out your mouth has to be filled with truth. You have to behave in an integrous way, like unmatched integrity, I love to say, because you're not going to outmatch me when it comes to integrity, because my name will not be sullied for anything. So I operate in unmatched integrity all the time. It's just where you have to be top tier, you know. It's where everything that you say has to be truthful, factual. You have to give the best information. You have to be ready to give a bluff at any given moment. But you also have fun.
Yeah.
Some of the best people. It's a joint environment. People have been there for years. Folks come in and they transition in and out. High burnout rate.
Yeah.
You know,
I was just thinking that.
very high burnout rate. I was there during COVID, so it was interesting.
Yeah.
Navigating, providing support functions as we navigated not traveling or limited traveling options. And just the things that come up with transitioning from one administration to another. I never knew that I could have a job in that area. I'm just Janet from the South Side of Chicago. What am I doing here supporting the White House?
Yeah.
20 some odd years later after I left Chicago to join the military.
Yeah.
Who knew?
I know.
Who knew I would get there? From LinkedIn at that. A random LinkedIn job. So it was probably the time of my life being there, supporting that mission. Just great people, great mission. I couldn't say enough good things about it. Everybody should do it at least one time.
Yeah. Maybe I will.
At least one time.
Maybe not in this life, but probably maybe the next.
Yeah, at least one time. It's nothing like it.
And then tell us about the mission of your current company and what you all do.
So NetCentrics has been around for about 30 years. We've been providing integrated support to the federal government and DoD. We do cybersecurity support, we do cross-cloud threat hunting software called Wraith. We're transitioning right now, right? A lot of companies are as well. We were operating as a large business, and now we're transitioning to a small business. And so with that comes additional challenges with competition, but it also opens up more doors for us to partner with different organizations. I am currently the facility security officer, the quality manager, and I'm also dipping and dabbling into contracts. So I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
We've done some restructuring, and I've taken on some roles that I did not know that I could do. You know, providing advice and counsel for as an intelligence analyst, something that I know I can do. I'm sourcing information, I'm gathering things, I'm putting it together in my brain, and I'm making a conclusion, provide my assessment, and I'm handing it off to senior leaders to go make their best assessment. As an FSO, I am mainly administrative. It's making sure folks who have clearances are adhering to compliance requirements that deal with the NISPOM. Easy peasy stuff for them. Don't be stupid. You know? Don't share classified information. You know, adhere to the NDAs. Make sure you fill out paperwork when we ask you to do so. You know, very like paperwork drill kind of stuff. But there's also that security awareness aspect of it. Hey, there are different threat vectors that are happening out here right now that you need to be aware of that can affect both your government customer and affect the proprietary information of our organization. You need to be cognizant of both. So I still have to do my job to make sure I'm doing my intel analyst skills. I have my hat on still.
Yeah.
Looking and sourcing information in unclassified forums, being a part of organizations like InfraGard and OSAC and attending events, making sure I'm keeping my knowledge up so I can protect our organization's assets and make sure I'm abreast of what's happening in the industrial security world with making sure we're protecting the government's classified information and assets too. As a quality manager, oh my Lord. I don't know if you know the world of ISO requirements, IT management system requirements, controlled unclassified information requirements with CMMC, which is the hot buzzword right now. All those things are, compliance requirements. And so what that means to me and people like you is that we have spreadsheets for days with clauses and directives that we have to make sure that we are complying with on an individual basis. a lot of work between me and our IT staff. And his contracts, all I'm doing is reading like a lawyer. So look at me.
You're pulling in all the skills
All the
historically.
skills. Look at me being a lawyer again.
Yep.
Reading through contracts, making sure we have TAs signed and doing non-disclosure agreements and making sure that we're on the up and up when it comes to compliance with federal regulations. Oh, Lord. Who knew?
It came back.
It came back full circle, so nothing never really leaves. It always comes back.
What do you love most about just all that you've dabbled in so much in the lens of national security? Like, what do you love most about the national security space?
You can literally do anything. Anything you can do for a private company, you can do in the national security space with a clearance. There are so many different support functions that make this mission happen. And one of the goals that I have mentoring organizations like Girl Security, which, we're both big fans of, is to let folks know it's not just about, what you see on TV with people briefing the president and the SecDef and yada, yada, yada. No, there are support functions that make all these jobs happen. And you can get in where you fit in. I think one of the reasons that I love being in national security so much, it has to do with the Air Force. The mission that I had as a targeteer, as an intel analyst, as a fusion center analyst, those all meant something. We were supporting folks on the ground, in the air. We were, I used to say, we were putting warheads on foreheads. We were doing the work that was assigned to us to do to make sure that folks came home, to make sure that we were successful in our mission. And, that kind of fills you with a sense of pride about what you do as an American, support the military, what I did as an airman, support the Air Force, and that it doesn't leave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you go into the other agencies and you see the work that they're doing to make sure that everything that we do to support the military is still there. So that it's hidden, but the passion is still there to do the job because I know what the outcomes could be once it's successful. That's one of the main things that when you talk about leadership is, are you laying out your vision correctly so that folks will understand what part they play in it and do their job to the utmost of excellence?
Yeah.
You've done your job.
Absolutely. It's such a good point too about how people, when they look at national security, when they look at the Department of Defense's landscape, they think of the more traditional elements of that, but there's so much that goes into both to, just ensure that the infrastructure keeps going as it should. What do you think is the most maybe unknown or underestimated element of national security from a threat perspective that like most Americans wouldn't consider?
How easy it is to send someone an email or a text message and have them click on a link and take over everything on that device and infiltrate a network and shut it down.
Yeah.
We have our organization. So any organization that's a clear defense contractor or that is supporting any parts of the defense industrial base, the DIB, any one of those critical infrastructure sectors, they're being targeted. And they're being targeted in the most innocuous of ways, right? We're talking about getting a text message from our CEO as a new employee.
Raise your hand if you've gotten a text message from your CEO asking to buy a gift card.
Asking to buy a gift card, asking to log on to send him something immediately after hire. These very targeted campaigns that people sustain against organizations in the DIB and against clear defense contractors. They only get worse. It's quicker. I was going to say more quicker. It's quicker now. So we see this rapidness with which folks try to catch folks slipping, basically. And they try to catch them slipping multiple times. And it's part of my security awareness program to brief folks who recently on board with us. Like, you might get a message from a Kenneth Cushing.
Yeah.
Telling you to buy something. Please don't do that and report to us.
Yeah.
Those kind of things are, we just have to, it's mundane, but it's necessary to give them like these little bitty tidbits of information so that they understand like it's going to come in the smallest of ways for you. It's receiving emails to our finance department with no corresponding email language on the bottom, just asking for, please submit this invoice for $11,000. Okay, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Delete, block, return to sender.
Yeah.
It's little things like that folks don't even think about, that could really cause harm to your network. All it takes is one click, literally one click, and then that's it. These folks are smart. They're using, AI-enabled technology to try and bypass things that they couldn't figure out before. But now they have, machine learning helping them how to be better criminals, how to target better, how to use publicly available information to build your profile from breach data, from you posted on social media, from all this available information to specifically target you at this company for this job that supports this critical infrastructure base. Folks are just not as aware as used to be.
That's the crazy thing too about the advancements in AI is that it's advancing the good and the bad.
Good and the bad.
Which is just such a crazy thing. It can help mitigate crime, but it can also help accelerate crime, which is just a whole additional consideration.
Yeah. And I attended the SANS Open Source Summit conference like that happened a few weeks ago, and needless to say, every single panelist touched on that. They all understand the threats that come along with advancing technology will also have rapid effects on advancing criminal efforts to continue to target and hack information, financials, all that good stuff. It's terrible.
Yeah. But, and then additionally on girl security, I want to talk about mentorship in the national security space and just your approach on kind of growing the next generation of leaders in your industry. So what's your approach on mentorship in that capacity?
My approach on mentorship in that capacity is that it's a necessity. Folks don't know what they don't know, and unless people are talking about it, you would never know that your skill set, your language skills, your critical thinking skills are exactly what's needed in the national security space. I'm sure you have seen it as well. I've been in spaces where I've been the only woman. Been in spaces where I've been the only Black woman, and it's disheartening more often than not to not have that additional camaraderie of women in the space where I know that they should be, because they did not know that the opportunity was available for them to enter into the space. So I said, how can I get to jaw-jacking about this? Just out of the blue, Girl Security came up on my LinkedIn feed. I don't know how it happened. I don't know, but it was divine timing because I was ready and I had the time to be able to do so. So I jumped in feet first, and it's been like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
I've met some just remarkable young women who are excited about joining this industry and who I have happily connected with and provided advice and counsel. And like, I wish I had that.
I know, right?
Before. Like, I've had it in spats. You have good leadership, but
Yeah.
wish I had that before, just to help a little bit, help push me in that right direction. So I hope to be that for other people. I think I heard a recent quote from Denzel, like, the first part of your life you learn, the second part you earn, and the third part you return.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in my return phase right now of who can I talk to help? Who can I talk to work on a resume? Who can I talk to do you need coaching in this area so that you can understand how brilliant you are? And I know you can do these things. Just as girl security grows and builds, I hope it just blows up. I hope it blows up and that girls have the opportunity to know, do, and be all that they can be in the national security sector, because we need them.
Yeah.
We need that diversified way of thinking. We can't just have all the same recruiting areas from the certain colleges.
Yeah.
We have to broaden the scope across the country to make sure we have the right folks at the right time, doing the right mission.
Yeah. And I'll just call it out that right now there's a big debate, I guess, about why or whether or not diversity makes us stronger. But I think there's probably not too many fields that I would say are as important as national security in the lens of diversity. Because when you think about like intelligence, like what is intelligence? And it's like the act of like thinking and analyzing and
Mhm.
just approaching information. And, why wouldn't you want a bunch of different perspectives on how
Right.
to analyze information when you're looking at things that are like changing the landscape of national security and affecting our country. And so, yeah, I want the girl from Chicago and then I want the guy from Wyoming.
That's
And you know
right.
what I mean? I want like all of those diverse voices at the table because they all see things from a completely different angle and they
Exactly.
can arrive at the best possible answer, the best possible solution. And it's that you're making such a good point that that's why diversity is important and so important with the most critical functions of our country, and one of those being protecting our country.
Protecting our country.
So absolutely. I want to also talk about just you as a person a little bit because I just love your energy and everything about you. And I want to ask, what do you love about being a mom?
Oh, my stars. I didn't know it was in the cards for me. I was dead set against having children in the military because I was deployed once and I saw a mom who had just given birth 3 months later. She was deployed and she was trying to dry her milk up
Hmm.
while she was there, and that was devastating to me. So I never wanted to have kids in the military. I didn't know what happened in my mid 30s to be able to do so, but boy, was it a game changer
Yeah.
in the best possible way. They send you home with this little human that you're supposed to know what to do with, and you just figure it out along the way. And it's been like the best experience. And tell you, having children will show you who you are.
Yeah.
It really will. It forces you to completely think differently about your pursuits in your career, your pursuits in where you live, because you got to get a good school district, your vehicles, I had to get a new truck. It completely changes it. I love the fact that my children are a reflection of me. My son asked me this morning, he's so funny. What would you do, Mom, if I wanted to grow up and do what you did? So you want to be a chief of staff? He said, yeah. I said, well, my heart. I said, son, you can do whatever it is you want to do. Do whatever it is you want to do. I remember my father, who was a preacher, showing us, exposing us to things that he wasn't exposed to as a kid because he wanted us to be better than him. He put his teacher hat on and showed us things. I'm doing the same things with my children. I'm exposing them to things that I know about, but things that I want them to know about, and even more stuff. We didn't have a lot of access to a lot of things. We were a middle class family, working class family. Both my mom and my dad worked all the time. You know, we went in school. We did the best we could. What we had, I played sports as a way to see things and do things for free, and it makes me happy every day knowing that I'm teaching them everything that they need to know. Like everything that you know right now is because I have taught you. It's because I have taught you how to do, be, and think. And to watch him be 12 years old and 10 years old and be super smart, empathetic, the best friend, and watch my little 10-year-old be an artist, an author, um, the funniest dad joke maker you've ever seen in your life as a 10-year-old. It makes me happy every single day.
Um,
Every
what
single day.
what do y'all love to do together? What's your fun activity that you do?
Oh, I can tell you what our chill activity is. We are a movie night family.
Oh
So
yeah.
Friday nights, I bought a couch specifically for us to all be able to cuddle on Friday nights
Oh,
and watch a movie.
that's the best.
It's wonderful. We do fresh baked popcorn. We have the lights and everything, and we just sit back and chill. And they already know I'm picking the movie tonight. They have their nights. It's fantastic. Besides that, we're a very athletic family. I grew up playing sports. I'm a volleyball girl, softball girl.
Volleyball scares me, man. I have trauma from trying to play volleyball as a kid.
I'm
I
sorry, friend.
respect it. Yeah. Well, I have no hand-eye coordination, and then when I tried to play, I didn't have like my forearms weren't tough enough and my hands weren't tough
Are
enough.
you
So
Daria? Are you? You stick that arm out and that's my participation.
I don't know. I have like two memories of going to try volleyball practice, and it didn't work out for me. But
volleyball is the love of my life.
I love watching it. Everybody looks cool when they play volleyball, but I just am not good at it.
So I try to I love kids moving.
Yeah.
So they have 1,000% energy. So it's all about finding activities where they can move, where they can learn how to protect themselves. They're in jiu-jitsu, and where we can just go hike our neighborhood. I live in the suburbs, man. We have a lake by our house, and so we're on that lake trail all the time. I can't believe where I live. It's so crazy coming from Chicago. Like, there's a deer in my backyard.
Yeah, if you saw that in Chicago, you'd be like, zombie apocalypse.
If I saw it in Chicago, I'd be like, are we in Skokie? Are we about a lab? Yeah, there are foxes howling, sounding like murders happening in the street. Where do I live? I don't know.
That's so funny.
Great.
If you could go back and talk to 18 or 19-year-old Janet and give her a piece of advice, what would you say to her?
I would tell her to be brave. I would tell her to tell her story and be brave. A lot of stuff happened in my youth that I didn't tell anybody about until I was old enough to understand how it was holding me back. Mm-hmm. And so I would just encourage her to be braver sooner.
Okay.
So that we can get over that hurdle and live our best life.
Yeah.
I would also tell her that having a big forehead isn't a big deal. And that you can be okay not wearing bangs. Because for the majority of my life, I was on the Aaliyah swoop, and it was very important to me to cover my forehead.
Yeah, I think, everybody feels weird about like their forehead, the shape of their head at some point in their life, but we figure it out. I'm also a big forehead gang. Whatever. Maybe there's more brain in there. I don't know.
That's what I said. I have a 5 head, but guess what? I'm smart.
Oh my gosh. Well, Janet, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I think that you're just a remarkable person, and I appreciate everything you're doing and mentoring and growing the next generation, be it at home or out in the community, and everything you're doing for people who are trying to make a difference in this world. So I'm so glad that we were able to have you on, and just appreciate you. And as a token of our appreciation, here's one of our Women in the Arena bracelets. It has a quote from the speech that our podcast is inspired by, and just want you to know that you can wear it and always, know that you have encouragement from us and a network of people here at Iron Butterfly Media that are cheering you on. And we hope that it can encourage you to keep living boldly and bravely.
That's what we hope to do. I love this. I love that you all amplifying voices, different perspectives. Again, diversity is very important. Diversity in thought is very, very important. And we need more women talking about their lives and how they navigate being in the arena, because we're all in it.
We are.
We're all in it. We have to stay there, and we have to fight, and we have to bring folks along with us. So we can continue to build.
Absolutely. And there's so many arenas that we're going to be in this lifetime. And I try to say that too a lot, that it's not just, the military arena or, being out in the boldest, craziest jobs, but it can just be the arena of being at home, having movie nights, building friendships, doing all the things. Life is an arena. So
life is an arena.
We're all in it. So.
That's right.
Well, thank you for coming on, and we so appreciate you.
Thank you all for having me. I loved it.
Yay! The Women in the Arena podcast is powered by Iron Butterfly Media, a production company committed to honoring the lives of women who have had an unseen and outsized impact on our world. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have a woman who you would like to nominate as a guest, please shoot us a message on our social media platforms. Be sure to subscribe and follow on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. See you next time.